What is going on, everybody? Happy Wednesday to you all. I hope you guys are all being safe out there, staying inside when you can. With that said, we have a special episode, uniquely special, as we thought, given what's going on in the world today with the coronavirus and all the information that's out there and a lot of the fear that's out there and a lot of the misinformation that's out there, we thought we would spend a little time this episode talking to an expert, a scientist, a Ph.D., someone who works in this field, to have a conversation about the coronavirus and things we should be mindful of, and just try to learn a little bit about what we can do and what to take seriously and what not to maybe be afraid of, because it's a scary time out there. I think everyone's a little worried about what this is, and so we have a great guest, Ben Calvert. Rochelle actually is friends that she met through the cystic fibrosis community.
Yeah, he's working on a cure actually for cystic fibrosis. So he works on the lungs and he works in a lab and he does experiments, and that's the extent of what I understand about what he does. He talks
a little bit more specifically about that, but he deals with viruses, and he seems to specialize in the immune system.
Yeah, and respiratory issues.
And respiratory issues, of which both the coronavirus affects. So,
and he told me he's doing a lot of consulting for people about what's going on. So I thought he would be a good fit.
It's definitely a different type of episode that we have for you today, but we thought it would make sense. And our goal, at least my goal, was to let's try to talk to the people we should be talking to and hear from the people that are experts.
I have to say I've been disappointed in members of Bachelor Nation who have been just so blatantly still going out on their social media.
I think part of it too is it's a little ignorance. I mean, again, I said this in the episode, a week and a half ago, when people were talking about the coronavirus, I was one of those people being like, "Oh, everyone's overreacting."
Yeah.
And we've heard of SARS before. We've heard of the swine flu. That never really affected us like this is affecting us. Yeah. And I think when people were hearing about it in China and other parts of the world, we just assumed this wouldn't affect us. And I think...
But now, if you're still going out now, it's like, what are you doing?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. We're not trying to point fingers here. We're just trying to make everyone, understand, right?
Yeah.
What they can do. This is not necessarily about whether you're susceptible or whether you're at risk.
Yeah.
It's about, this is a kind of a social responsibility now. It's doing your part to protect your neighbors, people you don't know, people you've never met. And so... I think that's just our goal for this episode, is just to try to get us all more information, so we don't create more fear than needs to be, but we also stop doing things that are foolish or maybe a little ignorant.
And if you have a platform, or make sure your friends know too, just to promote this idea of not.
I think we need to stop going out there, and it'd be interesting what Facebook or Instagram does, if anything, about people who are out there on social media saying,
"Oh, interesting.
I'm out there drinking. It's fine. I'm super healthy. So I hope you guys enjoy this. I hope you find it informative. We're learning as well, and Ben was very helpful, and we had a nice conversation with him. And again, my goal was to try to help reduce the fear that's out there.
Yes.
And information helps us. Information makes things less scary. As Ben suggested, this isn't the end of the world.
Yeah.
But there are things we can do to help with the long-term impact that we have worldwide. So,
and I know this is kind of a silly thing to talk about, considering what the subject of today is, but what are your thoughts on, you know what I'm going to ask? Tyler and Hannah are supposedly together. Is this a bad time to be talking about it?
No, I think it's, no.
Are you surprised?
I have no opinion. I don't.
no opinion.
I think it's entirely possible they could be dating. It's also entirely possible they're just friends.
Okay.
You know?
That's true.
It's entirely, I have no idea.
Right.
But yes, I mean, we always joke. I mean, obviously, I met Kelly at Chris's event. She's a nice person, you know.
Right.
She didn't disappoint in person. I thought she'd be cool in person. Everyone likes to think that there's always something going on.
Okay.
And just because, and there's not.
Yes.
And just because Hannah and Tyler are hanging out.
Yes.
Listen, everyone who goes on in Bachelor World has a very unique experience. It's very hard for other people to relate to. There's a lot of comfort that comes with that.
Yeah.
And Hannah and Tyler shared a mutual experience, and there's a comfort level there. Does that mean they're dating? It's possible. Doesn't necessarily mean they're dating.
Right.
And it would make, all I'm saying is it would make a lot of sense that they could just be hanging out as friends.
Okay.
But who knows? I know nothing, but I've had coffee several times and hung out with Andy Dorfman several times since the season.
Right.
And not one time was there ever anything romantically going on.
Okay.
Same with Caitlin.
Right.
Same with anyone else I on TV had some sort of romantic relationship with.
So we need to calm down. That's what you're saying.
Maybe,
we're just looking for comfort in this time of unease.
You don't have to calm down. I know this much. Matt's friend, Tyler's friend Matt, posted a picture. Did Hannah post the same picture?
I don't know.
I don't think they want people to calm down. You don't listen. When I posted the picture of
you never
Kelly,
want people to calm down.
I was totally aware of what people might say, and
Yeah.
I really enjoyed getting to meet Kelly. She's wonderful in person, but I don't think they're against people speculating.
Okay.
Right? I mean, you don't put that on the internet if you mind people speculating. Right. And you know what? And you're right. Speculation is fun. It's harmless. It's harmless.
Yeah.
It's getting our mind off of things. Why not? Who cares? No harm, no foul. So yeah, there's some levity.
You don't know anything though.
I really don't.
Okay.
I really don't.
Okay.
I know nothing. But people from Bachelor Nation often hang out because we have a very shared mutual experience, and that's
solidarity.
It is comforting to hang out with some people and not have to explain yourself. And that makes a lot of sense. But so stay inside, do some things. Think of creative things you can do virtually with your friends. Be safe, everyone. I hope you enjoyed this episode. And again, next week we have Penn Jillette on in our Wednesday episode. And a very interesting guy. Man, he was just interesting and thought-provoking. You may not agree with everything he has to say, but it's certainly interesting.
Yeah.
But until then, I hope you enjoy this episode. Stay safe. We will be back with some new episodes of Ask Nix. And I guess we'll just get through this all together. Ben, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time. Before we get started, I figured maybe it might just make the most sense to tell a little bit to the people listening about your background and kind of your expertise and why you would be a great person to have this conversation with.
Sure. So I grew up in England, in the north of England. Moved down to the south of England to study and start work. I did my Ph.D. at GSK's Medicines Research Centre in the UK. My Ph.D. focused on innate immunity and respiratory disease.
What does that mean kind of for the layman listening?
So innate immunity is basically working on your immune system and like the first line of defense. And so how the body reacts as soon as a pathogen such as a virus or a bacteria can get into the body or onto the body, how the body reacts initially.
Okay. Interesting.
The body will then try to sort of process that infection and then create what's called an adaptive response, and that's the adaptive immune system. So I really focus and research on the initial response.
And then respiratory is like this virus deals with the same thing, right? Which is because it affects your lungs.
Yeah. Absolutely. So
and you specialize kind of in the respiratory on people's respiratory systems.
That's right. Yeah. So I most focus on the immunity in the lungs.
Gotcha. Yeah. And how long you been working in that field?
So right back from 2013, I've started looking into this kind of field.
2013. Wow.
Yeah.
So 7 years now. So, I mean, I guess what are your, like, my hope of having you on is kind of give the audience a clearer picture of kind of what's going on, in the world today, specifically when it relates to the coronavirus, and try to provide people, useful information, information that will help them protect themselves, their families, while at the same time not creating more fear and worry than needs to be. But it seems like more of the experts are saying how we should be taking this seriously and do our part to help limit the spread of this. And so, and that's really just my goal. So, I mean, I guess I'll just give you the floor in terms of kind of your thoughts on where we're at right now, and maybe give us a little insight into the coronavirus and what people can do at home to protect themselves and make sure they're as healthy as possible, and then what they could do if they feel sick.
Okay, I guess broadly speaking, this is something that's going to get worse before it gets better.
Okay.
But that's not necessarily any reason to panic.
Okay. And what do you mean by that in terms of when you say getting worse?
So there's, practically speaking, if we're going to completely stop the spread, let's say tomorrow, it would require absolutely everybody going into isolation for up to 2 weeks, if not longer. Okay. That's impressive. That's not possible. It's not going to happen. So infection is going to increase, most likely. And it's looking like that, as we look every day, that infection rates are increasing. So the best thing we can do is keep up these preventive methods, such as social distancing, washing your hands at every possible opportunity. If you get a chance to wash your hands, try and carry a bottle of hand sanitizer if you're lucky enough to get one of those. And just try and be vigilant. And if you're feeling infectious, if you're feeling sick, the main symptoms to look for would be fatigue, a dry cough, and a fever. If you're feeling like you have those, then the best thing is to stay at home for 2 weeks if you can.
So, yeah, and I think that's where a lot of people, now it's like people are starting to, if they don't feel good at all. I mean, I think everyone right now, with people talking about the coronavirus, it's there's that immediate fear of if they have it. Regardless if they do or don't. I mean, I know tests are limited and we're trying to identify that, but are you recommending, at first just stay home as opposed to rushing to like the ER or the doctor's office? Because what are hospitals and doctors able to do right now if, let's say, you're running a small fever and you're not feeling well, other than testing and finding out and confirming that you might have it?
I would say that unless you have specific reason to go to the hospital and you're just feeling feverish, don't go. The people who should be going to the hospital are those that are at risk, perhaps have pre-existing or underlying respiratory conditions, or otherwise immunocompromised. It seems like patients with diabetes are somewhat susceptible as well. So if you have cause to go to hospital, because this could be quite serious for you, then absolutely go to the hospital. Otherwise, it's perhaps best to just stay at home. If you have some sort of flu medication, if you want to help with the symptoms, and kind of painkillers will, help take away some of the symptoms for you. But otherwise, just keep yourself in isolation. The reason being is if everybody rushes to the hospital, it's going to put a severe burden on the healthcare system. Tests are limited and tests take time. The more tests that are required to be done at the same time, the longer the results are going to take. And that puts a risk at those patients who really need to take the test, those that are really at risk.
Figs. Listen, our healthcare professionals, we owe them a lot, especially in these times, but doesn't mean they can't look fancy and comfortable.
Yeah. Get them a gift right now, please.
Yeah. For all the people in the healthcare industry, they could use a little love. They could use a lot of love. So get them a gift. And if you want to get them a gift, what better thing to give them than something they have to wear literally 24/7 nowadays?
Yeah. Can you tell us about the ones you have?
Well, they are gray and comfortable, and I wear them constantly around the house. And
What
often
style
at the grocery
did you
store.
get?
I got the joggers, and they're great. I don't know. People, I feel like, I told you, I get a little extra attention when I wear scrubs to the grocery store.
Yeah, but the pants, I feel like they're just casual. Like you can wear them on the plane. They don't look like scrubs necessarily.
No,
right?
they look great.
Yeah.
No, I mean they look like fancy leisure wear.
Yeah. And are they soft?
They're wonderful.
Oh, good.
I wear them constantly.
Ugh,
They're very
nice.
comfortable. Love them. Yeah, I love them.
They have tons of pockets. Some include over 10 pockets, which is super useful if you're in the medical industry. So, is there a doctor in the house, or a vet tech, or a radiologist, or any other awesome human in the medical industry? And even if you don't work in the medical industry, you definitely know someone that does and should tell them about or gift them some figs. That's
right. Listeners of the Viall Files are getting 15% off for a limited time. Go to wearfigs.com. That's WEARFIGS.com and enter code VIALL15 at checkout. Dipsy, sexy stories for you. I'm loving this Dipsy.
Dipsy is made by women for women, and get your sexy stories on. There's not enough stuff made for us.
No, there's not. I think it's great. I've heard some of these sexy stories, and I got to say, I know they're not for me. I kind of enjoy them.
Still enjoy them.
Yeah.
They are relatable and immersive, so you feel like you're right there. And there's also something for everyone, so you can find a story that speaks specifically to you. What's also awesome is they add new content each week so that there's always more stories to explore. So if you want to get your groove back on, you should definitely download the app.
I think this is great for our audience,
Yeah.
especially all the people call in.
Totally.
It gives you ideas, things to try with your partner, things to try with yourself, Close your eyes, have a good time. For our listeners of the show, Dipsy is offering a 30-day free trial when you go to dipsyststories.com/VIALL. So there's no reason not to try this fun experience. That's a 30-day free trial when you go to dipseastories.com/VIALL. dipseastories.com/VIALL. Have some fun with the sexy time.
Why aren't the tests more readily available?
So from what I understand, the government have chosen to acquire their own testing procedures and testing kits over choosing that of the testing kits available by the World Health Organization.
Oh.
So that has really limited tests available. To sort of put it into perspective, I believe South Korea are doing something around 20,000 tests per day, whereas it's taken about 3 months for the US to reach that number.
Okay.
So yeah, tests here in the US are limited until testing kits are made more available. Mm-hmm. So until then, it's going to be a slow grinding process to test.
I don't know. I don't know if this would be helpful to people listening. Like, I never even knew, honestly, until I heard about the coronavirus that people even got tested for the flu. And what makes are these certain types of tests specific to the coronavirus versus the flu? I mean, I guess like in terms of like, how do they test for that versus like, say, if you were to test for strep or anything like that? Like why are there only specific types of tests as opposed to just going in and like running like a positive, negative test on like anything you'd go in for? I don't know much about that in terms of why is there like a finite number of tests? Like what's entailed into the testing?
So the testing is for both cases requires what's called a PCR. That stands for polymerase chain reaction.
Okay.
So what happens is a healthcare professional, your doctor or nurse, will take a swab of your cheek or the back of your throat, maybe a nasal swab. That will isolate some of the virus particles. From that, a biomedical scientist will isolate the genetic material from that swab, that contains the virus particles, and the kit is specifically designed to detect the genetic signature of the virus. And so that then gets run through a PCR, which can be done in just a few hours. And if there are hits, then that then becomes a positive test. So okay, well, this patient has detected positive for this coronavirus strain. If it's negative, then it means that there was no coronavirus there in the first place.
Okay, so it's the elements of the test that are limited, and that's what people can't find.
Absolutely. Interesting.
And as far as like people's, you're specializing in immune systems. For the average person, how, just to give some people some calm, because there's this thing where younger people are hearing, oh well, you probably won't get that sick, or it won't be that serious, and it seems like some people are taking that as permission to just go about their lives, and going out there and going to bars and restaurants. I mean, more and more our local government is putting a pause on that. But, why should those people still take it seriously? And how is this affecting our immune systems? And do we know anything about the long-term ramifications of the coronavirus?
So yeah, if you're otherwise healthy and you do become infected, you're looking at about 2-week total recovery, perhaps 1 week of severe symptoms.
Okay.
The reason not to go out though and think, oh, it's okay, I've had the cold or I've had the flu before, I can do that, I can make that, is it's not about these people. It's about protecting those that aren't going to get through it. Mm-hmm. This has there is a death rate involved to this, and it is those that are susceptible to the virus, such as those that are otherwise preconditioned to something like a respiratory disease, or the elderly, or another at-risk group. It's about protecting those, and it's to go out for anything other than necessary reasons puts them at risk. So like going to bars or restaurants when you could stay at home and, eat or, have a bottle of beer at home instead.
Sure.
You stop putting those people at risk then for the sake of, thinking it's all about me instead.
What about people who are like still inviting their friends over for like a quarantine party?
Yeah, like game nights. And things like that. I'm seeing that on the internet. How
do you feel about that?
Again, it's something that's not necessary to do.
Right.
This, again, to say that you can't do it, I think induces more panic.
Right.
I think we rely on people being sensible here.
Yeah.
You host a game party, and let's say there's 8 or 10 of you there, and one of you has a coronavirus, but you're asymptomatic, you're not showing any symptoms, you can still be infectious. And so it's very likely that all 8 of those people will then become infected. Only then needs one of those people to be, in the service industry or any other kind of industry. Perhaps they're a delivery driver, and then, it spreads very quickly then. So
it's just not necessary. Yeah.
If it's not necessary, if anything can be done remotely, then that's definitely the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things too where it's just I'll admit like a few weeks ago when this was starting to come out, like most people, it was like, oh, everyone's freaking out about this, but like, is it just a really bad flu? And I definitely kind of was thinking that, and in amongst with conversations with my friends, but you listen to some of the experts and you hear people talking and realize it's kind of an irresponsible point of view. And like, as you just said, Ben, like that's how things are getting spread, by doing things we don't need to do. And, I'm in this kind of small group class. There's only 10 of us. It's a bunch of people, young, healthy people. And then we realized, well, you know what, instead of getting together, there's plenty of technology out there like Zoom where we could do these get-togethers on video Skypes and be just as productive. And then even you could do game nights and things like that, all the things you can do out there, FaceTiming your friends. It's not quite the same, but there's things we can do to still be connected with our friends and still be creative with some of the fun things, activities that we have. While not putting our friends and family members at risk. How long is the incubation period? Do we know in terms of like if you were to get it, how long could you potentially be contagious without showing symptoms?
That's a very good question. We don't know for sure. Our scientist's best estimate right now is somewhere between 2 and 14 days. It's quite wide.
Quite wide, yeah.
It's quite a spectrum.
Fairly scary. And then think about if you were to become infected as a young person, even for 2 days, all the people you'd be interacting with, touching, when we're not thinking about this. We put our hands on everything, on railings, coughing, most of the time we should cover our mouths. We don't all the time. Picking things off of the ground or on our phones constantly. That's one thing I thought of too. I've been sanitizing my phone a lot. Just like I've dropped my phone on the ground, I pick it up. I don't think too much of it in the past. I set it down on a counter, where people maybe have eaten before. I just never really thought about that. And in most cases, maybe you get away with that being a relatively healthy person. But now you're just kind of being more mindful and thinking of those things that you can do to try to help yourself. But again, if you were to be infected, not thinking about that, right? I mean, I'm assuming that's how this is being spread so fast.
Yeah, that's right. So it's people not knowing that they're infected, and then going out and it's being spreading fast. That's why, like you say, it's important to be mindful. So, covering your mouth when you cough, try and use your elbow instead of your hands. Try not to touch your face. Don't, keep this social distancing as best as possible, and that stops the spread.
Yeah.
From what we know, the spread is caused by basically droplets.
What's that?
So like droplets in the air. When you cough, you cough out droplets that contain the virus. That might
just washing your hands isn't going to protect you.
Not necessarily, but if you wash your hands and don't touch your face, then you're less likely to contract the infection.
Yeah, but like my mom will be like, yeah, I'm going to fly. We're going to wash our hands. We're going to be fine. But if it's spread through droplets in the air, that's just because you're washing your hands doesn't mean you're going to be fine.
No. Yeah. So, right. I mean, like, that's fair
right.
to say.
Absolutely right.
So to your point, Rochelle, washing your hands, it's something we can do. It's something that is helpful. If washing your hands, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ben, like if say someone who has it sneezes, covers their mouth, right? And then they walk down a flight of stairs and put their hands on the rail. 20 minutes later, you walk down the same set of stairs with your hand on the rail. They potentially could contract it at that point.
That's right. Yeah.
Washing your hands maybe would help that. But, it's not going to prevent you from getting it if you're out there. The only way to do that is really, as you say, to social distance and isolate yourself for a period of time.
That's right, yeah. And the washing your hands is just one of the many things that people are supposed to be doing too.
I've heard that men with beards are at risk. Is that, is that true? Is that accurate? Is that something that people should, is it one of those kind of helpful things, or am I being irresponsible by having facial hair?
It's not something I'm heard of. If it is true, I'm glad I had a shave this morning.
Okay.
It makes sense, I guess, because these water droplets can sort of accumulate in the beard, and that leaves you more at risk to inhale. Perhaps when you cough, the beard becomes a bit of an entrapping ground to catch these droplets, and then you only really need to get close to somebody to inhale these droplets and these viral particles. But
I feel like at that point, you probably have it. Like, is my beard really making it worse, or?
Yeah, perhaps at that point, that individual would have it. Yeah, but then again, it comes down to, okay, this is about protecting everybody else as well. So, I can't tell everybody to go around and shave.
Yeah,
that'd be a little bit ridiculous. I know a lot of people put a lot of effort into their beards, so.
It's not the end of the world. I could shave, but I'm just trying to find out what are some of the things that we're hearing out there on the internet that we should really, what are the important things, and what are the things that it's like, there's just so much information and so many people with an opinion. Yeah. I'm just trying to kind of get to the root of it. Theragun. I love my Theragun.
I know you do.
I just constantly have tension, and it's so great to have my Theragun just on the couch, watch TV, and it feels great.
Yeah.
How many times are you sitting there and you get a kink in your neck or a tightness in your calf or whatever, and you're always like sitting, and you're like, can you rub me? Are you good at massages?
Yes, right here, right
here. And the person kind of like, if they even say yes, half-ass it and do it for 4 seconds.
Yeah.
Now you can do it as long as you want. It's very easy to use on yourself.
It's crazy how they designed it so you can reach
it's
everywhere.
It's very easy to do.
Yeah.
It seems easier than you think. And then obviously if you have If you have someone, you can do it with each other. That's even easier. Feel better naturally, treat your pain, and get back to your life. Try Theragun risk-free for 30 days or your money back by going to theragun.com/VIALL. For a limited time, my listeners to this podcast get a free charging stand with their purchase, a $79 value.
That's cool.
Mm-hmm. That's theragun.com/VIALL. Theragun.com/VIALL. You know, and then as far as like how it does affect everyone, like, so you said it's more respiratory. Like, how is that different than, say, the flu? I mean, maybe that's a good thing to talk about. People say, well, it's just like a kind of a flu thing. So what are the reasons why this is more severe than the flu? Why is the death rate higher? And why should people not just say it's just like the flu?
Well, it's not so much necessarily that the death rate is higher. We don't specifically know if the death rate would necessarily be higher or not yet.
Gotcha.
What's different is this is new.
Okay.
This is a completely new virus in many ways. So
what's that mean to us?
So this, if you remember the SARS outbreak of a few years ago, it's basically a derivative of that.
Okay.
So it's very similar to that virus, but it's its own virus in its own right as well. So because of that, we don't have any vaccines. We don't know what antivirals work. We don't know what treatments, and we don't know necessarily what to expect. So we're learning all this for the first time. And, you know, while this, it has got very similar to the flu in that they're both respiratory viruses. They both can induce fever, fatigue, a cough, things like that. But the last thing we need is another flu. You know, because this is a completely different virus to the flu. It's just, attacking the same organ system, really, or infecting by the same organ system. So it's that we don't know enough about this one yet, and we don't have the treatments, and we're learning all this for the first time.
Gotcha. And when you say we don't have the treatments, there's no known, what's the word I'm looking for? Vaccine. Yeah. Is that, what does that mean? I mean, when you say, because like I'm not a doctor, you hear that there's no cures for viruses, there's cures for bacterias. How is a vaccine different than, like, say, if I have like a strep throat and I take antibiotics? Mm-hmm. Like, what does that mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. So antibiotics don't work against viruses, firstly. A vaccine essentially stops you not so much getting the virus. If you remember how I talked about the adaptive immune system, how the host or the body develops a defense against a specific pathogen. What a vaccine does is it trains your body to react to a certain pathogen or a certain virus, so that if you do contract that virus, you have that very specific, very fast, very rapid immune response. Okay. Rather than having to wait for your body to develop that immune response on its own when you do get the virus.
So right now, when people who are contracting corona, their body's kind of like, what is this? What's going on? Mm-hmm. And they almost have to start from scratch. And yeah, interesting.
Absolutely. So the body's reacting to this for the first time. The body is developing an immune response to it. That adaptive immune response does take time, which is why specifically like colds and flu or these coronaviruses take a week, maybe 2 weeks to recover from. And so the vaccine stops you taking that 2 weeks recovery because it's already had that immune response.
Sure. And then I'm assuming that we were contagious for longer periods of time as well. And then
absolutely,
related, and then that really impacts the spread.
Impacts the spread within your own body. Yeah.
Interesting. And then why are the corona, in terms of it being more of a respiratory illness than, say, the flu, or is that not accurate as well? Because I'm hearing a lot about people talking about respiratory as it relates to corona, and that's a specific kind of symptom of it. Is that true as well, or what is it about the corona that it's attacking people's respiratory systems?
It's the same way that flu attacks the respiratory system as well. It's just that these particles are in the water droplets, they're airborne, it gets into the lungs. The lungs are very, susceptible to contracting these infections. What this coronavirus does is COVID-19, much like its almost SARS parent virus, if you like it, it targets a specific protein that's expressed a lot in the lungs. And so if that protein doesn't exist, the virus can't get into the cells. And so that protein doesn't really exist on skin, in your eyes or in your ears, let's say.
Okay.
But that protein does exist in your lungs, and that's how the virus gets into the cells.
Gotcha. Okay.
So what's the effect on the respiratory system?
So what the virus does, it attaches to that protein. It essentially infects that cell. It uses that cell's own genetic machinery to replicate its own virus genetic material. The virus then generates more virus particles within that cell and then will literally just burst out the cell at some point.
Oh, wow.
So one virus can create multiple other viral particles and bursting out the cell. Those other viral particles then get into other cells and more, and that's causing a lot of damage to your tissue.
Permanent damage?
Not permanent. Your cells will recover.
Okay.
If if you're healthy enough for those cells to recover, for sure.
I was hearing something about heart damage that was happening.
That makes sense, yes. So the protein that it targets called angiotensin converting enzyme 2.
Okay.
We shorten that to ACE2.
Okay.
And that would make sense because, as far as I'm aware, ACE is also expressed a lot on cardiac tissue. So.
Oh, okay.
If someone experiences some type of damage, does the heart recover as well?
It can do, yeah. I think as soon as you get in those kind of symptoms, that's when it's serious.
Okay. So not everyone would have that type of damage.
No. You would need the virus to get systemic into your bloodstream, let's say.
And those are the people. It's more common for high risk patients. Like what's stopping it from becoming systemic throughout your body in the average person versus someone who has a very serious case?
Your immune system.
Gotcha. So your immune system will get to it and fight back before it has a chance to spread.
That's right. Far. Yeah.
So people who are immunosuppressed, they aren't.
Yeah, they're not going to be able to fight the virus, and so that's why it's important for those to get the treatments that are available.
Right, they are number one priority. Yeah,
and be protected from potentially even contracting the virus in the first place.
Interesting. And who are the people? I'm assuming most of the people who are listening who are high risk are aware of it. But just to lay it out there, we have obviously elderly people over 60. I've heard smokers are at higher risk. Is that true?
Yeah.
People with diabetes, heart conditions, anything else?
People with transplants are on immunosuppressants so that their body doesn't reject.
Absolutely, yeah. So anybody who's any kind of immunocompromised, a major one would be HIV patients. Okay. Would be susceptible. The elderly for sure. Anybody with any kind of respiratory illness or lung disease would be at risk.
What about someone I got a physical once, and they said, "Oh, you had walking pneumonia, and you didn't, and I was like, oh, I didn't know, I was fine." They're like, yeah, that can happen. Are people who have ever had like pneumonia at higher risk now if they're relatively healthy people, or is that only because if they were to have pneumonia? Because I'm hearing pneumonia being brought up as it relates to corona a lot, or that's when it takes a turn for the worse. How does that affect the disease?
So, pneumonia in simple terms basically means infection of the lungs.
Okay.
So it's primarily bacterial pneumonia. But if you've had pneumonia before, it doesn't necessarily mean you're susceptible. It's something you should definitely consider. But if you had pneumonia, walking pneumonia, and you otherwise recovered, it means you've got a very healthy immune system. You was able to respond to it just fine, as a healthy patient should.
They were just like, oh, I don't know. I had markers or something. I don't know what it meant, but they said it looks like you might have had this. And I remember being like, oh, there might have been a time 4 or 5 months ago where I felt a little like not myself, but that was about it. But so that's always kind of weird to hear or scary to hear, but then I guess it's a good sign that your body fights it. But all the more reason why you, for the healthy people out there, is it safe to say that not everyone who gets corona would ever really feel that sick, where they could just feel a little off, but not feel that sick and then be contagious to many other people?
Yeah, for sure. This definitely seems to be quite the spectrum in terms of infection. Some people might just be a mild tickle in their throat. For example, they might not even feel feverish, or if they do, mild feverish, but they take acetaminophen regularly, and that, counteracts the fever. So they don't really tell, they don't really know. And so, yeah, a lot of people perhaps will feel asymptomatic or just mild symptoms and think, oh, well, this can't be corona because people are dying from it, so I don't have corona. But
sure,
you might well have.
Yeah.
I read something that you should take Tylenol and not anything that's anti-inflammatory.
Like ibuprofen, you mean?
Yeah.
What is that?
Yeah, it's an ongoing debate, basically.
Oh, really?
In the medical field and the scientific field. I'm on the side that, you shouldn't take it. The
anti-inflammatory.
Yes.
What is the difference between Tylenol and, say, Advil or ibuprofen?
So anti-inflammatories, as you might expect, suppress what's called the inflammatory response. And
that's Advil or ibuprofen?
Yeah.
Okay.
Drugs such as that. So what would happen is, you get an infection. What your body does is it reacts to that infection. These, like the cells that I study, the innate immune cells, they can detect that infection and they produce what's called inflammatory cytokines. It's these cytokines that are actually responsible for inducing the fever, for inducing redness by dilating blood vessels. They're actually quite toxic as well in very high concentrations. So the idea of these anti-inflammatories is to stop that inflammatory response.
Stop the fever.
Yeah, to stop the fever.
So you're almost stopping your body's ability to fight off the infection.
Exactly. So this, we've evolved and developed this immune system in order to fight these infections. If we start suppressing that, then we're perhaps more likely to allow the infection to take hold more. And so taking away that body's response to produce these inflammatory cytokines can actually be quite detrimental. So whilst it hurts, you get a fever and a headache, and you feel hot and swollen, and and there is somewhat damage. It's there for a reason, because we're trying to fight a biological organism that's infected your body, and that needs to be quite toxic in itself as well. So.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's always that weird. I think when people get sick, and especially when they run a fever, there's that fear of your body just being in pain. So it's good to know sometimes that maybe that's a good thing. At what point does it become concerning? Let's say, all right, fine, I'm gonna allow my body to fight this. Is there a point where it's this is getting too serious, I need to go to the hospital, I need to go to the doctor's office? Is it when the fever never breaks, or like how long could you have a fever, or what temperature is it kind of relatively normal where it's still safe to stay at home, drink fluids and things like that, rather than to seek a healthcare professional?
Good question. I would say, generally speaking, if after, let's say, 7 days, it hasn't got better or it has got worse, definitely seek medical help.
Okay.
If at any point you're just generally concerned anyway, then for sure go seek medical help. I don't want to be here and say, no, just stay at home 7 days, you'll be fine. And then, people will take that as advice, and only end up getting worse. So for sure, if you feel like it's getting worse, particularly after about a week, then, definitely something's going bad.
What about the idea of like, I want to figure out if I have it so I can let anyone know who I may have come in contact with that, you've been exposed? Or are we past that now where we're trying to find out where it's spreading?
I think if you have cause to find out if you have it, like if you have genuine reason to think, okay, well, I need to find out because I'm a nurse, I work in a hospital, so it's important for me to find out, or I drive a school bus.
Right.
So, there are certain people where it's important for them to find out, but I think if you, ultimately can do your job remotely working from home and you're otherwise concerned, and, your institute in which you work has allowed you to work from home, then, go for it.
Yeah.
Do that and keep that social distance, keep self-isolation. You don't need the test specifically in that case. So it's the tests right now, until they become more widely available, until they become financially viable as well, needs to really be reserved for those who are otherwise in need of the test, or would be perhaps putting other people at risk because of their job.
Yeah, I mean, that was kind of my thought too, because it's like, all right, well, instead of panicking and telling everyone they need to go test, I was, for example, I was in New York a couple weeks ago. I got on a flight. So like, I'm trying to do my part by just pretty much staying in, wash my hands a ton, not going out in groups in public. And if I have to go out, you know, I minimize that because like if I were to have had it, I guess it's just like, well, wouldn't they just tell me to go home? And I mean, I live by myself, so I wouldn't necessarily be at risk of like, say, you know, I don't have kids or a family to potentially be infecting them. It's just like, I would ultimately be doing the same thing. So just, if you can, as you said, Ben, just stay inside. Mm-hmm. And if you do have it and you don't necessarily like aren't going to be infecting anyone else, don't put other people at risk by going to a doctor's office, people who might have susceptible immune systems and things like that. And then I guess that's the thought of like tracking it down. Everyone should be doing this right now. So it's kind of like, right? Like,
what do you mean?
Well, I mean, it's just like if you're, let's say you're feeling a little off, right? And you're like, your first thought is like, oh, I guess should I go get tested? Because I want to be able to tell, you know, I had a game night with my friends or something. I need to tell, everyone should just be staying home. So even.
I know, but it's like, it could have been 10 days ago, you know, when none of the world was staying home at that point. Or maybe some people were, but majority were not.
Well, I guess it's just like, I think what Ben's saying, right? I mean, is that we should all just try to do as much as we can by minimizing human contact for at least a period of time.
For sure. That's the best thing we can do is we're talking 2 weeks to a month, maybe 2 months of doing this before we're on the back end of it and we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel. But it really will require lots of people, or the majority of people, to do that.
And so that was my next question. So we're looking at a 1 to 2 months of really taking this seriously, and this kind of being the new norm to stop this from really affecting people on a global scale.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I heard something you can get reinfected. Do you know?
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah, is that true?
There's no reason why you can't.
Why is that?
Perhaps after you got the infection the first time, your immune system didn't quite develop an adaptive response strong enough to recognize that second wave. So secondary infections can be quite common in these things, but that's common in all of viral infections for sure. Yeah. There's no reason you won't just get it again.
Interesting.
And there's no reason your body can't build up.
No, sure, yeah. There's sometimes some people just won't have that inherent capability of recognizing that particular virus, and some won't produce that secondary sort of adaptive response.
Yeah. So that gets important to know, because if you were someone who has been tested and tested positive and you isolated yourself for a couple of weeks, it doesn't mean you can then go outside and not be mindful and cautious and not wash your hands. I mean, we should always be doing this, but clearly we've been far more mindful. Yeah. It's not as if, well, I had it, like, when people had the chicken pox. Yeah. Like, oh, I had the chicken pox. Yeah. So I'm not afraid of.
Why is it different than that?
Yeah. Well, this is it. I actually had the chickenpox twice as a kid.
Oh.
So it's not impossible.
It's not impossible. It's rare.
It's rare.
For that to occur, it's rare.
Okay.
But it's not impossible. And it's just because you've had it doesn't mean you won't necessarily have it again. You can get it again. You just won't feel so bad the second time, because your body's trained to detect and fight that infection this time. But what you are is still infectious during that time as well. So you then become this carrier that can still spread it, even though you're no longer going to suffer from that infection.
So people who have gotten it are potentially even more at risk of spreading it, because they'll truly not think they have it, may not feel any real symptoms, and are out there touching and meeting people and out in restaurants. Interesting.
So, I mean, there's news about a vaccine. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on that, or what could we look for?
I think it's definitely exciting. Let's hope for the best. Research trials, clinical trials, whether they're for drugs, vaccines, honestly, they very often fail more than they succeed. So we can only hope for the best that this particular vaccine works. But the company that's developing this vaccine, as well as other companies all over the world, are all trying to develop vaccines right now. And so, the more the better, essentially, because the more chance we have at success. I would say realistically speaking, we're looking at sometime next year before we develop a vaccine.
Yeah, I mean, the little bit I've heard, that's what you hear experts saying. So the stuff that Rochelle has read, is that just like hope, or is it possible, or like what's the difference between someone saying we're doing human trials and are around the corner versus someone like you and other experts saying this could be realistically a good year and a half away from having a reliable vaccine?
I think it's definitely hope, and it's possible it could work for sure. Okay. But on flip coin, it means that it might not work either.
Yeah. So when they say they're doing human trials, that just means they have something that they think could work, and they're going to try it out and see if it does. But that there's a good chance, as you said, that just means they're going to try it and only realize this didn't work. All right, now we'll build off of that and realize. Is that people say like, oh well, failure I guess is a good thing because they know what won't work, and now they can focus on the things that do work. But it's just one step in terms of getting to the final.
So everything that goes before clinical trials has only ever happened in the lab.
Okay.
There may have been animal testing in that. I believe I'm sure this corona vaccine, we're trying to skip as many steps as possible, but ultimately it's just lab-based tests to see if this works. And so you get to the point where it's time to try it in humans, in patients, and all you've got is this preclinical data, it's laboratory data. So it ultimately comes down to, okay, does it work in humans? Because that's where we need it to work. Mm-hmm. Most drug trials, most vaccine trials do fail because ultimately it doesn't work in humans. So, like you say, we can only go and think, okay, we've tried all this in the lab. It looks like it works. We think it will work. We hope it works. We can try it in humans now because we've done our best to deem it safe as well.
Sure.
Which is what most of the testing actually goes into. And so you try it in humans, but if it ultimately doesn't work in the human, we have to think again. We have to, in many cases, even just start again.
That was my next. So it's not building off; it's almost starting over.
Sometimes. So if the thinking towards the disease in question or this virus is that okay, this particle or this viral particle we've isolated is going to be the antigen we're going to get the patient's immune system to respond to. If that doesn't work on that particular virus, then, or the patient hasn't got the capability to respond to that particular particle, then you're not going to develop that immune response that the vaccine is supposed to do, and therefore it's not going to work. So.
Okay. Fascinating.
Can you tell us like what the symptoms are? Like if people are worried that they have it, what are things they should be looking out for?
Sure. So the three major symptoms are fever, fatigue, so feeling tired, and cough, particularly a dry cough. So not like a spluttering cough, like a dry chesty cough. Beyond that, you're probably looking at like maybe muscle pain, soreness, aches, things like that. Strangely, sneezing and congestion aren't all that common, but not unheard of. So definitely keep an eye out for those as well.
It's not that common?
Yeah, it's not that common.
It could be a cold if you're having congestion.
If you're feeling like sneezing, I think congestion is definitely there in the corona, but definitely that sort of sneezing or tickling in the nose that makes you sneeze.
Not that.
When you have a cold, that's not all that common. I think from last I looked, we're talking about 10-15% of cases only really have sneezing. Mm-hmm. And for all we know, that could be down to something else there as well, but not necessarily.
Well, it's interesting too because people usually equate like congestion and with like having the flu, but it seems like that's not always the case with the coronavirus.
Yeah, that seems to be something different and unique to the corona. Yeah. It's not really causing that much sneezing in corona, but it is there in some patients for sure.
Sure.
Could you have like muscle aches without the fever, without the cough? Could you be?
You could, but again, that'd be rare and uncommon. Yeah. I think those three symptoms: the fever, the cough, and the fatigue are definitely what you want to look out for right now.
And just, I guess, before we close, what are some things people can do? You study the immune system to kind of daily habits or the things that you can do to improve their immune system. There's only so much I think you can't stop from getting the virus if you contract it, but all the things that people drink a lot of fluids, things like that, or what are some other things that would be helpful for people to do just to make sure that their body is equipped to fight any infection that they get?
So firstly, I would say get your information from credible sources.
Which are?
So from accredited medical websites, if you're looking particularly in information against corona, I would recommend the CDC or WHO websites for sure. Try not to get too caught up in media hype or people who sort of overinflate their ideas on like boosting immunity. In terms of boosting immunity, my favorite is iron. So iron. So I take iron supplements in the morning.
Okay.
There have been several studies to show.
Yeah, me neither.
Show that, concentration.
I'm popping vitamin C all the time. Is that?
Vitamin C can help for sure. Again, there have been studies to show vitamin C really helps, particularly against viral immunity. So, take vitamin C, eat oranges, lemons. If you're not really keen on just taking necessarily pills, these are also rich in a lot of foodstuffs. But
interesting.
I guess I am a little frustrated. I'm thinking back, I'm like frustrated that we held the LA Marathon. I'm frustrated that like it took so long for like events to close. And I know like the medical community has been preparing for something like this forever. Like Bill Gates made a huge speech about this. I think it was 2 years ago.
TED Talk?
Yeah, TED Talk. And like, is this something you saw coming? And were you equally frustrated by people just going about life as usual for so long?
There's definitely frustration there. It's the thing is when we get to the other side of this, we're going to look back on many aspects and think we either overreacted or we underreacted. And what we have to really work out now, what's better to do, because we're not going to get it exactly right.
Right.
Is it better to overreact or better to underreact? And so you would think, in terms of protecting those that are vulnerable, it's probably better to overreact. So, closing events and closing schools or restaurants and things like that so that we can stop the spread. But, if it came to the point where it wasn't all that bad, we would think, well, what's the damage there? We're costing... The LA Marathon is a great way of charities raising money, and so those charities no longer get those funds. So it's difficult to predict the future, and we have to at least recognize that whilst we're being frustrated that these things didn't close down. So we know it's bad now, but we didn't know that 2-3 weeks ago, so it was... most of the people were joking about it back then. So
right.
Yeah, I mean, 3 weeks ago, I read something that people were suggesting that the NCAA not allow fans going to the basketball games. My first reaction was, that's utterly nuts. That's, what a total overreaction.
Yeah.
Clearly I don't even know if they're going to even have the tournament, let alone not have fans there. But I think that's the thing. It's just, as a society who, when we're not involved in the medical conversations, and we see on the internet people overreacting about all sorts of different types. I think it's human nature to have those types of reactions, and I think that's why we're just trying to, have these conversations to make us more aware, because it is that balancing act, as you said, Ben, in terms of getting the information we need and trying not to overact where we don't have to. And we'll look back, and I think that's a really good point that you made, that in a month and a year, we'll look back and we won't know what we didn't take serious enough, and we won't know what was maybe a little overreaction until we can kind of look back and see. And then the next time something like this happens, be better prepared for it. Because I see that a lot too. This isn't going to be the last. We've had SARS, we've had the coronavirus, we had what was that?
Spanish flu.
We've had what was the other one?
It was a bird flu, swine flu.
This isn't going to be the last new virus that reveals itself that humanity has to deal with.
No, for sure. And from the medical field sort of side, that it's generally accepted now, we're not going to stop the spread. Best we can do now is slow it down. The reason we want to slow it down is because if too many people get infected at the same time that require hospitalization, require medical treatment, the system's not able to cope. So if we can slow it down and spread that out a little more over a wider time period, then, you know, hospitals are able to cope, medical systems are able to cope a little better. The antiviral treatments won't just automatically run out and, you know, within the first 2 weeks, and then, you know, those that are sick then don't have antiviral treatments available because it was all used up. So it's a matter of really slowing that spread down now as best we can.
I mean, it's crazy to think so it's almost like people are going to get it. Like you said, it's just not getting it all at once, where people don't know what to do, and our doctors and nurses and medical professionals can't deal with it. That's
it. I think right now we're beyond the point of no return, where we can't stop the spread now. Beyond doing something like, you know, implementing martial law, where the military takes to the streets and enforces everybody to stay inside for the next 2 months. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You know? So, you know, people need to go outside. People need to go get the groceries. People need to step outside. The infection, you know, the spread will happen. So if we can slow that down best we can, then that gives us a better chance to cope with it. If we can protect those that are, you know, susceptible, that gives us a better chance to really reduce the death rates in this virus.
Okay.
I'm just frustrated because I'm having trouble convincing like my parents. Like I heard that's kind of common. That age group for some reason doesn't want to take it seriously. Also, they don't think of themselves as old yet. You know what I mean? So they don't think that they're vulnerable.
Yeah.
And they don't want to change. They don't want to believe the media hype.
Sure.
So
I had a family friend that we got together this weekend, and I was just like, hey, just so you know, like I feel fine, but like I was in New York a couple weeks ago, like and you know, and that was her reaction. It was just like, oh well, you know, when it's my time, it's my time. I'm like, you're not that old. You are certainly old enough to take this seriously. And it's a challenge. It's the mindsets we have this, especially American society, of like just toughen up, you know, be tough. Somehow our toughness is going to have an impact on our body's ability to fight a disease, and that's not the case, you know. It's
I think ultimately what your parents have got right is not believing the media hype, I guess.
Okay.
You know, in my opinion, the media sells chaos, and so it's in their best interest to overhype things a lot of the time. So, but you know, scientists and doctors and researchers, it's not in their best interest because it overwhelms them. So they're the people we need to be listening to in this situation. And again, you know, it's that there is this sort of stiff upper lip idea that, I'll be fine, I'm not that old. Again, it's not about you. You know, it's about those that are at risk, those that, you know, we can't just lock them away for 2 months either. And so it's really about protecting those that can't fight this virus, you know, whether they're elderly or otherwise. And so
it's not about creating fear. It's about us just being socially responsible and being smart and doing what we can.
Yeah, this is your American duty.
Yeah, because I totally agree. Like fear does sell, and sometimes fear can be very motivating. And it's weird because like sometimes, you know, over the weekend it was St. Patrick's Day weekend, and like cities like Chicago, I mean a lot of cities, it was just like no one was getting the point. You know, there's a lot of young people out there saying a lot of ignorant things and going out, and it's kind of like, at what point do you have to scare them enough to go home? Not scared, you know, this like, it's not the end of the world, right? Is it safe to say this isn't the end of the world?
No, it's not the end of the world.
Yeah, it's not the end of the world, but yeah, we don't want to mess up our economy as much as we don't have to. And this is going to affect our economy, certainly. But what we don't want to do is destroy our healthcare system. We don't want to have people who are at risk be casualties of this flu, and those are the things that we can do. And it's not you know, two ends of the spectrum. It's not end of the world or I'm fine. It's you know, it's somewhere in between.
That's right, and it's the I guess, just let's not collapse the healthcare system, because then we probably will get close to the end of the world if that goes under, so.
There you go. Well.
So let's, but no, it's not the end of the world. It's sad that this is causing deaths, and, this is something new, and this is yet another reason for that people are dying, and, another reason for people like me to try and find treatments for these kind of things.
You're very important.
But it's a matter of just protecting the things that we can protect now, like the patients and the healthcare system, because we really don't need that to go under when situations like this happen. And then once we're at the other end of it, let's learn from this. Let's see, okay, well, what did we do wrong, so that we can make that better for next time. And I don't know if it's a matter of scaring the younger people, or if it's just getting them to realize that it's not all about them, it's about others at this point.
To force it on people.
Starting to. And that's why I wanted to have you on, Ben, just because we do have a lot of young listeners. Most of our audience is the people who are the ones that aren't at risk, the healthy people. But I think it's good for us to understand what this is, what it's not, what not to be afraid of, but at the same time to do our part to protect our neighbors, our family members, our friends, people we don't know, all the people we interact with that we don't even think about on a daily basis. We interact with so many people that we don't even talk to or communicate with. Like you said, like you could literally be touching a hand railing going down a set of stairs, and 50 people after you do the same thing. So just kind of protecting our neighbors.
I guess it's a wonder if there's these people are getting mixed signals, in that, the very people who are, shutting down schools, restaurants, cancelling events, putting restrictions on many things, are then telling these people, don't overreact, don't panic. Mm-hmm. This is nothing to worry about. And why shouldn't we overreact and panic? You're closing everything.
Right.
And
it's scary.
You look at it that way, and you start to understand. And then and the thing we have to wonder, okay, why we're having to do that is because people are underreacting.
Okay.
And, they're still going out to these events. And
right.
so, okay, well, if you're choosing to go out to these bars and restaurants, then we're going to have to close them. And so they get closed. And again, it comes back to that thing, are we overreacting? Are we underreacting? We're never going to get this right. Yeah. And never will be right. But, we really are relying now on people just to be socially responsible.
Yes.
As best as they can.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Ben, I really appreciate you taking the time. We're going to let you go so you can continue to
go back to the lab.
Fight the good fight and keep finding solutions to these problems. But I really appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully people listening found this informative. Be safe, protect your neighbors. Any final thoughts, Ben?
Just to echo that, be safe, think about others as well as yourself, as well as your family. There's people out there that are at risk, and, all these measures are there to protect them, not necessarily just you. So
it's not about you.
All right. Well, thanks again for listening. We will be back next Monday with another Ask Nick. We'll keep trying to do these while being smart. And then we'll finally have Penn Gillette next week. Again, a great interview with Ben. Very interesting. A great interview with Penn. Ben. It was a great interview with Penn. Very interesting guy. I hope you really enjoy it. But we wanted to make sure we get Ben in here. It seemed to be pertinent and relevant to the times that we are in. So, as always, be safe. Stay inside. Wash your hands. And we will see you on Monday.